Hi folks, and welcome back to The Plot. Let's start with the good news. The first, blue sky. It feels like a month since I actually saw any blue sky, and the sun, it's lifted my spirit instantly, honestly. So pleased. It's been so grey, just oppressive and miserable recently. You know, I've still been coming to the garden, but it just doesn't, it's not the same as spending a day in, under the bright blue sky. Other good news, I've got a bit of time off work. I meant to say that in the last video, but I forgot. So I've been super busy at the allotment. And the third bit of good news, amazing news, stupendous, shocking news. Yesterday, I finally did something that had been on the to-do list for about 5 years. I finally bought a shed. Massive thank you to all the patrons. I couldn't have done it without you. There were a few donations on Ko-fi as well. So thank you so much to everyone who contributed to the shed fund, which I've been saving for absolutely ages. I cannot wait to start Project Shed. Thankfully, because it's a pre-build, a prefab anyway, I've still got to build it, but it should be super simple to assemble. I'll show you all the details in the build later on and the company that I've got it from and all that good stuff. But it shouldn't be a 20-part greenhouse or polytunnel series type thing, So I was literally skipping around the house yesterday after I bought it. One of those things that you just been on the to-do list for so long and I never really thought would ever actually happen. Can't wait, cannot wait. But what's on the to-do list today? Well, I've got loads and loads of work. As you can see, I've made really good progress on these 3 beds. They're still very messy. What I've done is a very rough, because they were so overgrown, a very rough hoe. And then I wanted to come in, a day or 2 later and see what was still alive, what bits I'd missed, like this little weedy bit. These clods of grass have clearly survived. So today or tomorrow, I want to kind of scrape up that additional vegetation, put it in the compost bin if it's not going to die off in the bed, and then I can get green manuring or mulching or both. And when I say mulching, using well-rotted manure. Today, I do want to get in and do these 2 beds because I haven't done these, the Brassica bed and, oh God, look at it, it's just wild, and this squash bed. I do as well, I've brought the canes up to do this, so I'll show you what I'm doing with that today. And I've brought the strimmer as well, so I can at least tickle the edges of these beds and make them look a little bit neater. I think quite important to try and keep them down over winter so that they're not all completely soaking wet all of the time. Just having the sun to dry out that outer edge, I think is going to prolong the life of the wood. So we've got all that bed work and soil work to do today, but there's some other bits that I want to I've got a lot to do today, so I'm going to try and keep the pace going and not ramble for too long. This water butt's still got some water in it, but this water butt, you might remember I had some issues with it last year. It's got a tiny split. It's just in there, little split. It's always really hard to see, and I use this as the irrigation for the tunnel. It was like a reservoir that I would manually fill, then I had some solar irrigation, didn't work in the end. Just ordered a new kit that I'm hoping to set up this winter, but it was slow leaking and I thought it was the irrigation siphoning off, but it was actually this tiny little crack at the bottom. So I have ordered this, which I've seen has kind of mixed reviews, a lot of 3 and 4 stars. It's maybe a bit wide and it might be a bit finicky, but I'm going to try and patch this up, fill the water butt up and see if it fixes the problem. First thing, for this to have a chance of sealing, I'm going to try and get it nice and dry. I'm not hopeful about this, but if I can't get it fixed, then the whole water butt has got to go in. It just seems like such a waste, It's the problem with plastic products like this. A little bit breaks and the whole thing is gone. I'm saying that as if there's an alternative. I guess you could use like some kind of old-fashioned barrel. I don't know. This one is designed to work underwater, but I'm still slightly skeptical. It doesn't look great. I wasn't expecting it to be white, but it is sealed around the edges. So I'm hoping that will be just enough to keep the water out of here. It's going to be really annoying if this does fail. I probably won't use this for anything automated or irrigation because this is obviously quite prone to failure. This is adding another point of failure to an automated system, which you don't want to do. The new water butt though might be perfect for using that for irrigation, but I can figure out the details later. Let's fill this up and see how it goes. In a perfect world, I would have this kind of rigged up to some kind of water collection system in the polytunnel itself, but guttering and polytunnels is very tricky. I've seen lots of people DIY it and it can be done, but requires quite a lot of preparation. It's a big job, so for For the time being, what I have done is just been filling this to have a water reservoir which is nearer to the polytunnel door, so I don't have to go halfway across the plot, fill up a watering can and then come back and fill everything up in here. So far so good, but it is a very slow leak, so we'll leave that, check back at the end of the video, see if it's holding. Okay folks, good news, it's the next day and it has been successful. You can see overnight it has held, so that's a win. I can't believe that actually worked. Next up, I want to get working on the beds. This is kind of the key job to get done on the plot at the moment. There's a lot to do. We're going to take a trip to Time-Lapse Town and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've done on this bed first, because this has had a proper treatment, and then I'm going to get going on the brassicas. Hi folks, and welcome to Time-Lapse Town. So this is yesterday where I came out and just wanted to get stuck into the work, and I started on this bed and immediately realized, oh God, all of my beans were still in there. So my Kalima beans and my Borlotti beans were all still there, ready. I kind of left them on the plant to dry so that I could harvest the seed for next year. The Kalima are so important to harvest because I can't get them anywhere else. So it took so long, but I did get them done. You can see me at the back there tackling that massive chard. And as well, there's a lot of things like the calendula in here and the verbena, bits and bobs of which I'm leaving. A lot of the calendula, I leave the roots in the ground and they sometimes survive winter and come back, so that's quite nice. But just getting in with the hoe, the soil miller, loads and loads to go in the compost. And then this is where it starts to get interesting. So this L bed, my goodness, I had so much work to do here. First it was getting rid of that P frame, and then I got a bit sidetracked because that frame at the back is just falling to pieces. And this has been here for many years on the plot. I've never really liked it. I've never really been able to use it. I've never had any success. So I thought, hey, you know what? It's finally time. It's going. So that got a little bit distracted, and then I was harvesting the apples and sorting out the path at the back there. But eventually we got around to the L bed, giving it a really good carve up. And then because this one was so compacted, I decided it was time to start digging. And this is proper digging, and it was immediately apparent how compacted the soil was. It was coming away in these just massive clumps of clay. I did find the odd worm here or there, but given how much manure and organic matter I have put on this, I tried to get this like a new no-dig bed at the start of the season for kind of spring, but it just wasn't doing it. It was so heavy, and in places, is that going to focus? Yes. In places there was really nice pockets of all the organic matter that I could see, but it wasn't blending in, you know, it's not getting taken into the soil. So I thought this is going to be the dig trial. I've gone proper old-fashioned digging. Maybe not old-fashioned digging actually. I've only gone 1 fork deep. So I think old-fashioned you'd go 2 forks deep, and you can see I'm just adding in well-rotted manure. I think I went for 4 bags here, so like 360 litres. That's quite a lot of manure in not that big a bed, and really got it nice and mixed in. Proper digging. And then after I dug it all in, I went over again with the soil miller to try and break up the clay. It's not been too wet, so a good time to work on clay. You know, it's not completely sodden or anything like that. Got it all mixed in, and I'm hoping for good things. And this was just the last bit of the day, working on this other little bed by the side of the greenhouse. I'm hoping for good results from that. It's a little bit of extra effort, but it's kind of a bit more of a traditional method. And I was thinking about what might have caused the really compacted soils last season. And there were 2 kind of things I thought of. Less mulching with the horse manure, leading to a bit more weathering, and compaction from the rain potentially. The other thing, I was wondering if at some point historically I've dug the soil and worked it too much when it's really wet. That is the classic kind of mistake to make with clay. And I'm not confident that that's the mistake I've made, but it definitely seems possible. It seems like the sort of thing I might have done in my impatience. And speaking of impatience, a few things in my hand. The rebar that I've ordered to support the blue piping, I've got that for the back bed, and another thing I have ordered is basically some 15-inch rebar. Don't do this. I would advise buy your rebar in bulk. That was quite expensive for a small order, and these were also quite expensive. Probably just get your own, get an angle grinder. These do have a nice sharp point on though, and what I'm going to use these for is just in here. Basically I'm going to tap these into the ground and it will just support this raised bed from bowing out a little bit. When I built the raised beds, they're just floating. They're not actually anchored into the ground. So just a couple of these, probably literally only 2, should be good. There's lots of other ways to do it. On my big scaffolding boards, I used Unistrut and much longer lengths. This is just a bit of a smaller solution. Like I say, I would recommend just buying your own rebar, getting an angle grinder and cutting it to size. But I was being a bit impatient. I wanted to do that this week, and let's get in here. I'm going to trim around first and then give the beds a good weed, a good mulch, and I'm going to sort out the support structure. A long overdue job. This has been a mission and a half. I have given the butternut a massive prune, taking back all the dead, dying back leaves, and also trimming off loads of shoots where they're trying to set new fruits, and it's just far too late in the season for that. I want them to focus on what's left, and hopefully this will improve airflow and all that sort of thing. Loads of really nice material for the compost from this butternut squash. There's still quite a bit on here, and it's still pretty wild, so I've not given it a proper thorough weed. I have staked up all of my brassicas. I've got some Brussels sprouts and some purple sprouting broccoli in here. The purple sprouting broccoli is looking really good. This bed seems to have really enjoyed the manure that I put on it last season. Everything is growing in here much better than everywhere else on the allotment, so something about it went right, and all of the brassicas look really healthy. The next thing for me to do is a more permanent solution for these. Speaking of permanent solutions, for years I've complained about brassica netting, how difficult it is to weed. That first bed was a proper mission. Like I say, I've got in here a little bit and done some weeding, but I'm going to wait until the butternut squash is done and all died back properly, and then I'll be able to get in here and give it a proper manure and a mulch. But this wooden edging, this is the first time I've really benefited from it, or the first time I've ever done a proper weed on these beds with it, and it makes such a difference. It's so much better. The amount of slugs that I can see in here is actually terrifying. Just everywhere I look, there's massive fat slugs. Anyway, I'm gonna get the rebar, and basically, at the moment, these are mostly just stuck in the ground. I thought I'd try something new, just stick them in the ground, see if that works. Really high clay, hard to get them in properly, and then they're very wibbly wobbly, so not very secure at all. Just gonna get some rebar, drive it in. This stuff is nothing special, just 8mm. It is galvanized, so hopefully it will be okay in contact with the ground and water. It's 1 meter long, so I'm probably gonna try and drive it in about 1/2 meter, giving plenty for the MDPE piping to kind of grip onto and be supported by. If possible, I would have gone a little bit longer, maybe 1.5 or something like that, but it should still be decent enough. And because it is soft at the moment, I can drive the blue piping in a little bit deeper as well. It does still have a bit of a twist on it, which I don't love. I'm gonna spin this round so that the twist goes the other way. I must admit, this isn't feeling quite as secure as I was hoping, but I'll get the rest on and we'll have a look. Okay, so all of the rebar is in, and for a moment there I was worried I'd made a bit of an expensive mistake and this wasn't even gonna work. I say expensive because I got these from like a DIY, like a high street store, so paid well over what you should really pay for them if you've got a bit more patience. They have kind of solved the issue. The problem is I think I'm kind of solving a problem that I didn't need to solve. I'm solving a problem I've created for myself. You can hopefully see in the foreground, or I'll show you some B-roll now, the method that I've used on the other bed, just with some big chunky bamboo canes. And to be honest, I recommend doing that. I thought that if I used way more piping and had piping all the way along the length, it would be stronger, but that's just false. It was a really silly mistake. But the issue is when I put these on bamboo canes is that these are subject to a lot more force because they're so much longer, and when you get lots of wind rock and that kind of thing. But with the rebar in now, these are very, very strong. If I did this with bamboo canes, then the canes would split. So this has kind of solved the problem, and I am pretty happy with it, but all things considered, I probably could have just done that. I suppose this is a bit more permanent, it will last longer, and the bamboo won't need to be replaced. But to be honest, if I was doing this again, and what I would recommend you do is just use bamboo canes and use some nice big chunky tall bamboo canes, and then you just need a little bit of piping. What I still would like to do at some point is potentially put this on a timber frame and hoop it, but it is very large, so I'm not sure how well that would work for something that needs to be tall enough for brassicas like purple sprouting broccoli. I think the idea is as well in future I'll have a tall one that maybe might be a bit more annoying like this to get into, and then I'll have a shorter one for cabbages and the smaller brassicas that's much easier. I think that's definitely a good idea, but I'm very happy. We've made lots of progress. I'm going to get this netting back on. It's always tempting in winter to take your netting off, but the pigeons will be in here and they'll gobble up all the brassicas if I leave it. The great thing about a bed like this becoming so overgrown and full of big thick vegetative leaves is that there's very, very little weed growth in here, to be honest. So I have done a little, oh, here's one I missed. More to come out. So this is what I mean. If there's something like this where there's no fruit on it that's substantial, it's coming off. There's a few little flowers on there, so it's trying, but there's no point. I'd rather the energy went into these beauties. There's another one I missed. Another little shoot. They're just like tomatoes with their side shoots, and they'll keep on going and going and going. I was a little bit worried that the netting not coming down over these completely was going to let sort of caterpillars and things like that in under, but thankfully, touch wood, they don't seem to have figured it out, and the brassicas still look okay. This is probably not great the way that these are going to be layered on top of each other, but hey ho, they chose to grow like this. They can deal with the consequences. Oh, there's a big fat caterpillar. Nice lime green one there. It's not a baddie. There's another one here you can come off to. And this one needs to stay out because it's got a really damaged stem. You lot can go back in. Okay, brassica netting on. Every now and then there are jobs on the allotment that I have to do that I wish I had a second pair of hands. I quite like doing it as a lone ranger, lone wolf most of the time. I do love being able to look across my allotment and think, yeah, I've done that. Aside from my patrons, of course, with their help. It never feels like I'm truly alone. But physically, it would be nice to have a second pair of hands to put this on. I do love this netting as well. My life is slowly getting better, and I am enjoying this job more over time with now that there's beds and borders and solid netting that doesn't rip every time you want to weed it. I'll put a link in the description for this netting. It was kindly sent to me, so always worth mentioning that. It's very good heavy duty stuff from Harrod Horticultural. I use it on both of these and it's really, really good. Been quite good with keeping the sleeves down, but there's still a few of the spiky courgette type squash leaves that get you. That is looking so much better in here. Very good. Unfortunately, you can see as I've tensioned the netting, this pulls in, which is sort of one of the other things I wanted to solve, and that's why I had the bamboo canes going across the top, because they were meant to be tensioned to stop them from falling in and out. This one is definitely more sturdy, and that one seems sturdy, but this one is not playing ball. And well, the other option you see is that you have a timber upright that you can use as a kind of tensioner, which would be nice, but something to be fixed at some point. If this leans in a bit, it's not the end of the world. You'll probably see it come down more and more as I tighten this. It just looks a bit goofy. That's the main issue with it. It's not a structural issue. I wouldn't recommend the rebar. Let's just leave it at that, shall we? This bed has had such a nice transformation. I am now just going to tap in those little raised bed supports, sort of anchor type things, and I'm a little bit nervous that we're going to have exactly the same problem and that actually they're going to be nowhere near big enough or offer any practical support, but you know, we're committed now. They're a decent size, but actually in soft clay ground they might not anchor it that much. Most of the ones that I could find were actually 12 inches, and they're generally sold as sort of heavy-duty, superior camping pegs, that kind of thing, tent pegs. So when I found the long ones, and I was like, oh yeah, they're 15, that should do it. I took them out of the packet and I was like, oh, it's not actually that big. Not quite as large as I was hoping, but hey-ho. Now, if I didn't have a shed on the way, I would probably be now at this point thinking a bit more about structuring these and getting something a bit more permanent, but the shed comes in 2 weeks, so I'm going to tap these in, and then it's a case of just going into tidy mode on the allotment. I've got lots and lots to go to the tip tomorrow, the dump, and I need to get in the shed and start emptying everything so that I can do the dump run in the morning. So let me tap these in quick. I think these might be okay, you know. I don't need a lump hammer for this, but it's just what I've got to hand. Yeah, it's pretty soft, so that's going in very easily, but it's not going to do too much, but hopefully it will help a bit. I'll get a few of these in and maybe do something a bit more permanent in the future. Bit of a weird day today. I was really expecting this to be like a nice chunky upgrade to the Brassica netting. Not quite that. Maybe an example of what not to do. Actually, I would definitely recommend just going with these bamboo canes. Looks way better, more secure, nice and stable. Hey ho, you live and learn, don't you? At least the beds are looking fantastic. I've got loads more boring stuff to be getting on with, so I won't subject you to it. Thank you ever so much for watching. An extra special thank you to all of my Chili Pepper Tier patrons who I have been practicing. Tony, Bill, Pam, Mel, Michael, Socks, Angela, Dorcasaur, Andre, no. Tony, Bill, Pam, Mel, Michael, Socks, Mel, Michael, Socks, Angela, Dorcasaur, Louise. Tony, Bill, Pam, Mel, Michael, Socks, Angela, oh God. Tony, Bill, Pam, Mel, Michael, Socks, Louise, Andre. Tony, Bill, Pam, Mel, Michael, Socks, Angela, Dorcasaur. Take 100. Tony, Bill, Pam, Mel, Michael, Socks, Angela, Dorcasaur, Louise, Andre and Brett. Yes! Finally, we got there. See you next time, folks.